This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo. That is Jerome Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and partner in crime from the premier podcast of the DSP network, Doc and Jock. That is John Charles, or as I like to call him now, John Chuck Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, it's all good, brother. Looking forward to hearing what you thought about week one of the Tigers. All is good in our world, brother. What's going on with you?
Well, you know what? Tigers, pretty successful so far, and the weather, pretty lovely outside, huh? The last 2 days, Monday and Tuesday of this week. Can't complain about the weather, guys. In the 70s, you can't beat that in the month of April. You really can't, Doc. You can't top that, as we've seen some crummy opening days, and opening day at home for the Tigers this season, Doc. Guess what? It wasn't crummy. People, meteorologists were forecasting snow, rain, and guess what? It wasn't that bad at all. And we saw sunlight shined upon Comerica Park this past Friday. Fulmer on the mound, and Fulmer was solid. But then the bullpen wastes the lead. And how many times have we seen that already out of K-Rod, Bruce Rondon, Kyle Ryan not getting his job done, Shane Green not getting his job done. And now Rondon, the guy we thought would be the setup man, your boy, Doc, that you love, immensely love, and can't get enough of, he's now already been demoted early on in the season after two very lackluster appearances, too, out of your man.
Listen, Vito, as we're recording this, the Tigers are leading 2-0 over Minnesota. The bullpen has come in. You've had Shane Green and
Shane Green not get it done again.
Kyle Ryan have done the job. Hey, didn't give up any runs.
I know.
Listen, you can't expect them to just get guys out at a super high clip. All you can expect with the Detroit Tigers is, hey, go out there and compete. And out of the 6 games, they've won 4 of them. So, hey, let's try to focus on the positive here. I know we're going to talk about the negatives in terms of the bullpen, in terms of some guys that have come out and maybe had slumps to start the year. But week one has been ultimately a success. Wouldn't you agree that the start of the 2017 season, when you play 6 games, you win 4 of them, take 3 out of 4 versus Boston, that's a good week.
But, Doc, not to be too negative here and critical, but if they had a bullpen, any kind of a really relevant bullpen, guess what? The Tigers right now would be 5-1 entering this game against Minnesota Tuesday afternoon. Think about it. They would be. If it wasn't for K-Rod struggles, Bruce Rondon struggles, now in the minors, and good God, he's in the minors. Now, the thing is, they keep hanging on with him, keep hoping that he will live up to expectations and become something of relevance and worth with that big arm, rocket arm that he has. Thing is, that's all he can do is throw hard. And he's overweight. He's been overweight all throughout his career. Didn't get his act together in spring, and it carried on to the early portion of the regular season. And now the time has come that he's got to actually put up or shut up when it comes to losing weight, the excess weight, and getting into shape.
Listen, I know you've been ready to pound on Bruce Rondon from the
for a long time.
From the time that he was sent down, you've probably been excited, like, okay, yeah, it's a guy that has stunk and came into spring training okay, but then when he went off to the World Baseball Classic, something happened where he just started putting on weight. And as a guy who's 26 years old, you would say, yes, it's a disappointment that he came in as a guy that his role was to be the setup guy. And at 26 years old, you would think that after being sent home a couple seasons past, you would say, hey, when's the guy ready to take charge of his career? When's he ready to be professional? When is Bruce Rondon ready to be a guy that you can count on?
It's not going to happen, Doc. Dream's over, man. That ship has sailed. Don't you think so? With Rondon, I know you love your boy. He can throw hard. But, okay, that's all tempting. That's all sexy. But at a certain point, you got to be productive consistently, as he was. Okay, in his defense down the stretch last year, he put a lot of it together. He looked more consistently productive. But now, we saw him being used in the 8th inning, and in that extra important role, he couldn't get it done. He couldn't muster enough productivity out of himself to get batters out in crunch time when it mattered the most, when the Tigers were in ball games up to this point and continue to do well despite all of that. lackluster effort out of Rondon. And it's good he's down now in the minors, where he should be to refine his craft. And the thing is, he might need too much to improve upon and too much to go right for himself at this point to get everything fully together, as we saw signs of it coming together for him last year down the stretch. I think he needs too much to go right at this point, though. Even though he's still relatively young, I think he needs too much to go right for us to bank on the fact that Rondon comes back up to the majors at some point this season, Doc, and is extremely effective and relevant, and especially in a late inning role.
Man, Vito, listen, obviously he's going to go down to the minors, and when a player gets sent down there, they have an opportunity to work on a couple things. There have been several pitchers that have gone down, and look at just recently, Max Scherzer went down to the minors to tinker a little bit, and when he came back up, look what happened. Now, I'm not going to say that with Bruce Rondon, but he's got to work with Todd Jones. He's got to figure out what the hell's been going on, and he's got to correct some things. But I'm not going to sit here and just write off Bruce Rondon and call him a bust. He's 26 years old, can throw really hard. He's got, obviously coming off of the arm injury, his miles per hour has dipped, but many people think that it's an issue with his commitment to the game and his discipline. I think you can correct that at some point, but at 26, you got to start questioning whether this guy is a bust or not. But do you think he'll come back in the next, let's say, 30 to 45 days, over under 50%, he comes back to the ball club in 30 to 45 days?
Well, I think it's how much he shows while he is in the minors. Also, the Tigers, I think, don't expect him to be down there, though, long either. I think they expect a quick retuning of his craft, of his pitches, of his arsenal. And he has to just simply, to sum it all up, he has to be better with the art of pitching. Not to steal a line from Jim Price, the radio color commentator for the Tigers on WXYT FM 97.1 The Ticket. But once again, I think he needs way too much to turn around his career at this juncture in his career, to ever be a reliable lights-out late inning arm. I just don't believe in it happening at this point for Bruce Rondon. And now it's time to reflect on a few positives for the Tigers, right? How about Nicholas, not Nick, don't call him Nick, Nicholas Castellanos. A clutch game-winning RBI against Chris Sale, the former ace of the White Sox, the current ace of the Bo Sox, in a Monday afternoon duel with Justin Verlander. Verlander, I guess, got the best of Sale in the matchup. Obviously, the Tigers won the game and taking 3 out of 4 against the Bo Sox over this 4-game weekend series, as you already noted in the podcast, Doc. But Sale, actually, when you look at his numbers, pitched better. At least had the more strikeouts than Verlander. Verlander only had 4, I believe. Now, Sale recorded double-digit Ks. I believe it was 10 for Sale Monday afternoon. So really, he looked like the better starting arm for most of that game. But then this guy, and Nick Castellanos, has to break open the tie. And his hard contact rate is off the charts to start the season. Have you guys seen what it was? At least going into yesterday, 80% of his balls that he put into play, even if they were recorded as outs by the opposition, 80% of those balls were hard contact, considered hard contact balls off of his bat. That's telling you he's doing something right, and all these big and nice timely hits are bound to come for Nick Castellanos. Nicholas Castellanos. Now, I don't want to be mistaken here. Nicholas Castellanos, more and more often, I think, as the season progresses. If he keeps up right now his habits at the plate, I know one thing, Castellanos will be a consistent, reliable performer at the plate and a run producer, a very effective run producer all season long, Doc. You made a bold prediction. You did about him, remember? And you can tell our audience here on, are we on Periscope? Tell our audience, or Facebook Live, one or the other. Tell our audience here, Doc.
What I say
about that?
I already forgot. I think I said what?
Oh, wow.
Did I say 35, 40 home runs?
30-plus home runs and 120, I think, RBIs. That's a big amount for both home runs and RBIs.
That's a bold prediction.
That's what it's called. You're right.
Now, Nick Castellanos, Nicholas Castellanos.
Yeah, excuse you.
I will say, though, as part of the offense, has shown that in the early part of the year, hey, if they've gotten down, then they've had the ability to come back, especially in the home opener. Let's start with that. Game 1 at Comerica Park, you had a situation where it was kind of a game that dragged on. You had the lead, but then, you go to the bullpen, and they were not able to finish the job, which required the offense, hey, to come back. That big 8th inning that Boston had, you come right back, and you tie the game and take the lead. So I like the fact that this is a group that's played together, that's probably going to play a complete 9 games more often than not. Now, some people will say, hey, listen, a team should not get blown out 11-2 versus a team like the White Sox, but I'll turn around and say, you know what? Those things happen, and when you come back and you take 3 out of 4 from the Boston Red Sox, now granted, whatever flu virus was going around, hell, let's stick with it.
It was big with the Bo Sox. It affected Mookie Betts, who was a finalist for the American League MVP last year, remember. It affected a large portion of their ball club.
So you come back and you go, listen, you split versus the White Sox, you take 3 or 4 versus the Boston Red Sox. And I say, listen, it's an opportunity for the team to come out strong. And they have come out strong, remember, in years past. Yep. But so far, all you can do is look to game by game what you're seeing. And you're seeing a team that's playing a pretty decent brand of baseball. We can nitpick and look at other factors that, they definitely need to improve upon. Needless to say, the bullpen. But overall, I like the grit of the team. I like the fact that this is a team that can weather the storms, per se.
And now the other thing is, Joe Jimenez, we know, has been called up. My boy. How many times did I harp on the fact that I think Jimenez should have been up with the big league club last year down the stretch? And then even this season, why didn't he make the ball club instead of Kyle Ryan? A guy like that, who has shown time and time again, as we have an audience outside right now viewing us. We know that much, walking, and we love having people outside to look at, guys. You know that, right? And I got my glasses on now, by the way, too. I hope you enjoy the glasses on instead of being off as I had at the start of this podcast. But yeah, I don't know why Kyle Ryan, honestly, Doc and guys, is still up. I don't think he's ever going to be effective. I know he had to come in for Shane Green, relieved him. I guess did all right, huh? Got out of the half inning. But the thing is, him and Shane Green, you can't rely upon those guys at all in late inning, crucial roles in the bullpen at all this season, in my opinion. They're not going to be those reliable guys that should be used in tight ball games.
Question from Facebook Live, and a really good one. Do you think this year Nicholas Castellanos breaks through and becomes a Major League Baseball All-Star?
Well, I think outside of the injury last year, his season last year was very, very high quality. I think he can definitely be an all-star, and this year he can become that as well. And he's a cocky MFer at the plate, isn't he? And with that arrogance, it's a good thing for him. I think it helps him succeed, and he wants to prove some people maybe wrong that when he first came up thought he didn't have enough, to get it done consistently at the plate. I think there were people that doubted him because of how he came on when he first started with the Tigers, and then I think people dogged on him a little bit too much, at least, Doc. And it might have killed his MO or his mental game a little bit and got to him. I don't think anybody, the naysayers out there now, Doc, of the Tigers faithful, I don't think they're able to get inside of the head of Nicholas Castellanos, once again. I think he's a cocky MFer that doesn't care about what you're saying, what I'm saying, or anybody when it comes to describing or critiquing his quality of plate production and quality of fielding the hot corner. As I think he's come into his own definitely at the plate and more at third base, where he's adequate at least defensively at third base right now. What do you think about Nick and him becoming an all-star this season?
Why not? I think that a guy that puts in the work, a guy that you can sense that last year, prior to his injury, was going to do some big things. So I sit here and I say, Nicholas Castellanos, to start the year, has been a guy that you can now start to say maybe, start to focus a little bit more on his defensive prowess and becoming the best third baseman that he can be, because he lacks what I call range at third base.
Yeah.
In that a lot of balls get through. He doesn't have a lot of natural athleticism at third base. But offensively, hey, why not? If you can contribute to the team in any way that you can, especially offensively, I'll take it. And something I do want to bring up in terms of a positive, the offensive production from spots 6 through 9 was one that we would consider prior to the season a weakness, wouldn't you say? And then they've come out, and McCann's hitting home runs. Iglesias has contributed a little bit offensively. Romine has done some things.
He's looked good so far, Romine. A lot more than last year in previous memory with the Tigers.
And when you can have your total offense contribute, that helps a little bit to make up if a guy like a Miguel Cabrera is going to struggle, right? So the offense and the lower half of the lineup has done a real good job to help this team contribute and help this team offensively to produce. So with that said, if they can continue to contribute, if they can continue to be a solid offensive threat, then hey, when you add JD Martinez to this lineup, my goodness, you could have a really potent offensive lineup that can help. Because what do we say? How do you help a devastatingly bad bullpen? You help with the offense. You help with consistently getting runs. You help with if they kind of screw up and give up a couple runs or blow leads, you come back around when it's your turn to bat and you get home runs. And I know many people don't like the fact that the team might over-rely on home runs.
Yeah.
But if you can get offensive contribution from lesser-known guys like a McCann and like an Iglesias and like a Romine consistently, look out, because then when guys like the big dogs start striking, look out. It's going to be a good thing. It's a good thing right now.
Miguel still really hasn't hit this year, and they're winning so far. So McCann, though, speaking of him, really quick, Doc, I think he's become ultra-reliant upon the home run ball. It's like if he's not hitting a home run, is he even hitting? What do you think? I mean, it seems like he's scaring me with that right now. It seems like it's home run or nothing. If he's not hitting a home run, he's not doing anything of quality at the plate. And that scares me about him, Doc.
Well, Vito, it's an interesting thought, but you know what? What did we ask for from James McCann? We're not asking him to carry the team. We're not asking for him to bat, 325 with 40 home runs and to drive in 110 RBIs plus. What we need him to be around is, in between 250 and 300 and to contribute when needed. So if it is just home runs, hey, you'll take it. Because look what Gerald Saltalamacchia was able to do. What his strength was clutch home runs. And
but that was it. And look at his WAR and why he got signed to a minor league deal by the Blue Jays. We don't need McCann to be down the totem pole that much where he has to be relegated to a minor league kind of gig, or viewed as a guy that's worth a minor league deal and that's it. He should not be producing at that little of a rate. He should be producing at a starting catcher rate, which isn't anything of high quality or big-time expectations. We just need a little bit of offensive productivity out of him and more than what we got out of Jared Saltalamacchia and out of McCann himself last season. And I think McCann was bothered by the injury bug so much to start the season, Doc. And remember, he missed a good amount of time because of the injury bug. I think that hurt the rest of his season at the plate. I think this year he's going to be much better off consistently, but I'm still scared about his reliance on the home run ball. I think he's a little bit too much of a home run or nothing guy, and that's never a good thing, and especially from a guy who's still relatively young, at 27 years young this season, Doc.
Okay, Vito, very valid point. I can respect that. What is another aspect of the ball club that you've seen in week one that has been impressive to you? Because, in the second half, we'll talk a little bit about some of the struggles and some of the early concerns that we have. But what is something else that you've looked to and said, wow, I'm really getting impressed by what I'm seeing here in the first 6 games?
Well, besides for Nicholas, and his hard contact rate, and I see him being on the verge of an all-star campaign. Besides for that, I would say you're seeing Kinsler hit so far at a very premium rate, and that's good to see out of him, a guy that won a Gold Glove last year, hit a bunch of bombs last year, and really had his best season last year in a while for himself as a major leaguer. So I like seeing his productivity to start the season at the plate. And, those are the things that really stick out. And then the bottom of the lineup, what they have done, specifically Andrew Romine, in a new position, even playing left field as well. And we see him producing at the plate. Can he continue to do so? Because right now it's very vital he does because of JD Martinez, too, being out with that, the injury that has caused him to miss the start of the 2017 regular season.
Some quick breaking news on the podcast. I just checked my email. So yesterday, to let people know, listen, I try to get information for the network as much as possible. I try to apply for credentials. I try to reach out to Major League Ball clubs, professional sports teams, and I applied for the Major League Baseball press box. Now, sometimes I really do go into it thinking that I'll never get approved, right? I just checked the email, and here it goes. Dear John, welcome. You are now a registered member of MLB Press Box. So
nice.
So what we'll do is, real fast, we'll take a quick time out. I'll peek around in terms of what that means. Maybe we can start applying for credentials for baseball. But I do think that means we'll probably be getting access to information that involves all the baseball teams, maybe press releases and things like that. So good stuff, Vito. You and I working hard and doing some things for the network. And I just found out live that we're now a registered member of Major League Baseball's press box.
Stuff we couldn't get access to before, now we can, and even sound more insightful. Big props to you, Doc.
Yes, sir. So we'll take a quick time out here, regroup, refresh. I'll peek around a little bit, maybe give some insights in the next couple of minutes as to what the hell I just did.
Yeah, we have to find out.
But stay with us. You're listening to the Tigers Talk podcast on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Doc here for the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you to everyone that's been downloading this fine project. In order for us to keep the lights on, the microphones hot here in our Sterling Heights studios, all that we ask is check out our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's the easy way to go check out what we're doing here, when the shows air, who's running this operation, and for all the news and notes regarding our project, go check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We're putting out daily audio content, and I think it's one of the finer podcast networks in all of Detroit. So again, thank you for all your support. Check out DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
And back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company and Doc Matt Boyd on Tuesday. Very solid. 6 innings pitched, 1 hit allowed by Boyd after a miserable outing out of Boyd against the White Sox last week when Anibal Sanchez had to relieve him. And did you see the Sanchez and how disappointing he was? Yet again.
Well, listen, everyone kind of knows that Anibal Sanchez doesn't deserve to be on this team. And you look at when he goes out there, you have to, I guess, use him in low leverage situations is the best way to describe it. Not just one low leverage, 5 situations where you got at least a 3-run lead or you got a situation where you're getting blown out. That's the only situation where you can use them. But hey, the Tigers were still able to get that opening win versus the Minnesota Twins in the series that you want to have. And they're playing really well at home. And to tie up what I had said before the break, it's interesting. We got a little bit more access to multimedia, a little bit more access to some press releases. Still not figuring out the credentialing aspect because, as always, you know how it goes. The website tells you to email the team director, and then the team site, the Tigers team site, tells you to email MLB credentials. So that's how it always goes, right, Vito? There's going to be a little bit of a headache, but we have a little bit more access, so that's some good stuff. So,
well, good for you, because now you can sound a bit more insightful when you're talking here on this very podcast, Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco. The starting rotation so far, Doc, has been very solid for the Tigers. Bullpen has gone awry at times. K-Rod has seemingly found a way to make it interesting every single time he's gone out there to get a save. And I think it's time for Brad Ausmus to institute/deploy a combination of Alex and Justin Wilson in high leverage situations, including to close out games when the time is necessary. Meaning, if it's a high enough leverage of a situation with a 1-run or 2-run game, as it was going into the 9th inning on Tuesday afternoon when he deployed K-Rod, who allowed a run, made it interesting yet again, why not use Alex Wilson against right-handers and Justin Wilson against lefties?
Vito, you're very nitpicky, man. That's
what I would do.
They're 5-2. It's a good start to the week. And hey, we're recording this, enjoying some soccer and baseball. You can nitpick Brad Ausmus to death, but in the end, hey, we'll take a 2-1 victory. But a lot of fans on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast are really frazzled. They're like, we need support groups. We cannot handle all these close games by the bullpen. And it's just one of those things where when you look at it, a lot of the fans right now, and I guess we'll talk about it a little bit, the fans cannot handle this bullpen anymore. I really feel like whenever there's a situation where K-Rod struggles, Anibal Sanchez, Shane Green, Bruce Rondon, if he ever comes back. I don't think we've seen Jimenez as of yet. We've seen Justin Wilson and what he's been able to do. And I think that the fans, though, are not willing anymore to tolerate this bullpen because they've realized now for the better part of the last 6 years, had the Tigers had any semblance of a bullpen, they would have been more successful as a ball club. And I just really feel like the fans are really angry regarding the status of this bullpen.
Well, let's look at it right now. They're 5-2 after 7 games. They could be 6-1 easily if it wasn't for their poor bullpen this season. And in the past, and this season included, they have had in the past and now once again have a bullpen worthy of a last place ball club, of a team that is way under 500, such as the San Diego Padres, the Atlanta Braves, these teams that have no shot whatsoever to make the playoffs. Their bullpen is of that quality, the Tigers, that is. And when you're Brad Ausmus, that means you're constantly put into bad situations with who to use, when to use them, because there's never that very reliable arm to use in late inning high leverage situations consistently, at least, unless he starts deploying the Wilson duo of Alex Wilson against right-handers once again and Justin Wilson, who I've seen hit the radar at 97 miles per hour already this season. If he's throwing that hard and is effective, you've got to use him not only against lefties, but maybe even against righties here and there in the highest of leverage highest of high leverage situations. And Wilson right now, Alex, he is a guy you would use against righties, as I said. And Jay Wills, he's got to be the guy you throw out there all the time when you need an out in the 8th, even the 9th inning against a very tough left-hander, almost against any left-hander at this point because of K-Rod's struggles. Jay Wills, with all that said, you use him. No matter who the left-hander is almost, because of, as I noted, the struggles of K-Rod or his ability, it seems like, game in, game out to make it interesting when us as Tigers fans, Doc, we are barely hanging on watching this bullpen. We have had it up to here, all the way up to the top of our heads, and we can't handle any more of the struggles of the bullpen. Yet they continue to persist, and I think they will continue to persist as the season progresses, Doc, as well. No doubt about it, in my opinion.
Okay, so how have you viewed, I understand, your complaints regarding his use of the bullpen, who he's bringing in, and shuffling like that, but overall, how have you viewed Brad Ausmus in the first week of the season? 5 wins out of 7. There has been a couple situations in terms of when he's brought in his closer, in terms of especially on opening day, I believe, to get the 4-out save.
Yeah,
when he could have potentially kept, I think, Alex Wilson on to continue to do well because he was pitching pretty good. But in essence, how have you viewed Brad Ausmus, and how would you rate him the first week of the season? Because I know you're being very critical, and you're looking at him with kind of slanted eyes there.
Already, I'm being critical of Brad Ausmus, this guy that I've never really liked from the get-go. In his 4th season now as Tiger skipper, hasn't proven enough to this point to say he should be the Tiger skipper. Should have been axed in the offseason, got brought back. I didn't like it. And now this season, the Tigers are 5-2. And you know what? As much as I like to blame Ausmus for the Tigers' struggles and the bullpen struggles, when you don't have the arms equipped or enough arms that are reliable to throw out there on a consistent basis, then you're put in a bad situation constantly as a manager, and you have no hope yourself then. So it's not on Ausmus, not even remotely close to entirely on Ausmus, the struggles of the pen, because the pen he's been given to use is not of a high major league caliber. It's full of guys, for the most part, that just aren't good enough to cut the mustard seed. Would not even be in other major league clubs' bullpens. Just would not be. I mean, how many guys can you say that about? This is really the sad thing, Doc. How many guys can we go and say that about, that these guys would not even be used in other major league bullpens right now? Think about it. Kyle Ryan, would he be in another major league team's bullpen? Maybe not even one of the most lackluster ball clubs. Of the worst, he might not even be used in one of their bullpens. That's how poor of a reliever Kyle Ryan is. How poor of a reliever right now Shane Green is. These guys like that, Rondon, how he pitched to start the season. None of those 3 guys will be used in any other major league club's bullpen, Doc. That's how poor of relievers they are, and yet they continue to be used time and time again by the Tigers. And once again, that's not completely on Ausmus because he's been given a crappy situation. His back is against the wall every single game he goes out there and manages because he knows in the back of his head he doesn't have reliable guys that can keep leads from the 5th or 6th or 7th inning on. You might have a few good guys, but the thing is you can't stretch them out too much or use them every single day, as in Alex Wilson and Justin Wilson. They need their days off too. So when they're having their day off, or they threw, because they threw a bunch of pitches perhaps the game before, or they're just not available because of an injury, then he is in the worst position possible as a skipper. Because at that point, Doc, when that's the case, he has realistically nobody to rely upon in the Tigers' pen.
You know what? The way I want to look at it is this, okay? It seems like he's a little bit more measured, and I think the thing that you are maybe not noticing is the sense of urgency that this club has. When Bruce Rondon in years past has struggled, right? It seemed like Brad Ausmus was kind of utilizing him in a way where he just said, hey, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to keep giving you 2, 3, 4, 8 to 10 chances to struggle. This year, I really feel like Brad Ausmus and Al Avila have a much more sense of urgency, and it's a little bit stronger where if the pitchers are not performing well, they're taking them out. I really feel like so far, yes, we can be critical about Brad Ausmus in a lot of areas, like you just said. But there's another scenario in which you have to also give him credit in that so far so good. It's been a good start to the season, and you're starting to see the Tigers maybe start to take shape a little bit in terms of how they're going to play. Maybe they're not going to win every game 8-4. Maybe they're going to play tighter games and more controlled, and they're going to utilize the starting pitching. And when players don't play as well, maybe they're not going to get as much rope as they have in the past. And so I'm giving Brad Ausmus a lot of credit for his sense of urgency at this point at this point in the season.
And the Tigers front office, the Tigers management, to demote Bruce Rondon to Triple-A this early in the season. Great move on their part. Something, Doc, as you already noted, probably wouldn't have been done in the past by Tigers management. So glad to see that out of the Tigers, their sense of urgency, because they kind of know this is truly the last hurrah. The window is rapidly closing. I'm even willing to admit that at this point. Maybe they should have started to retool in the offseason, didn't decide to do so. Now they're stuck with the same ball club pretty much as last year, and the same bullpen as a whole, and it's sad that they're in this state where their bullpen is as shoddy as it was last year, and that's why this Tigers team will probably fall short of their own expectations once again, and that should cost Ausmus his job. And the only thing really quick to harp on regarding Ausmus is on opening day at Comerica Park last Friday when he used K-Rod for a 4-out save. At that point in the season, it wasn't that dire of a need to use him for a 4-out save. A guy that's not ultra dominant. Even the most dominant of closers aren't used for a 4-out save in their home ballpark on opening day. So, way too early in the season, in my opinion, Doc, for Ausmus to deploy K-Rod in that type of situation. Let alone later in the season when I think he's proven time and time again, for the most part at least, K-Rod that is, that he's not good enough, not dominant enough at this juncture in his major league career to be used for 4-out saves, really at all. Once in a great while, but it better be a very dire situation, and even in that situation, why don't you put Alex Wilson in? Or leave him in. Or you put Justin Wilson in if he hasn't been used already. Once again, my love for the Wilsons, is immense. It's, sky high right now. And we'll see, they might come back down to earth and not be as good consistently going forward. As Wilson, Jay Wilson that is, wasn't that great last year on a consistent basis. Maybe he starts showing signs of that once again at some point this season. If that's the case, you might be left with one reliable reliever on a consistent basis in the right-hander Alex Wilson. So that would be a sad state, too, for the Tigers to be in. But my point is, it wasn't worth it for Ausmus to deploy K-Rod for a 4-out save, let alone is it really worth it for him to deploy K-Rod in that type of situation once again later in the season, when you know you have other, more reliable relievers, more capable of being used in a very high-leverage situation as that. And I'm not even saying K-Rod has to be stripped of his closer gig. It's not like that. You could deploy Alex and Justin Wilson in the role of, in the same kind of a role as Andrew Miller is deployed by Terry Francona and the Cleveland Indians. Why can't he just come in, Alex and Justin Wilson? Why can't they both come in to simply put out fires in those high leverage situations? It might be the ninth inning, might not be. It might be a situation where you still want to use K-Rod in the ninth, but you don't need a designated closer either all the time. Ausmus has been stuck to those defined roles in the 8th and the 9th so many times throughout his managerial tenure in the big leagues that it's cost him dearly at times, and I think it will continue to do so this season. And that's why people gripe about Ausmus. That's why they get on him so much, because of stuff like that, which has cost him dearly in the past, and you've got to believe he's bound to repeat those same darn mistakes in 2017.
Okay, Vito, I get a sense of kind of where your gripes are and where your complaints are with Brad Ausmus. You're looking a little bit more of the long-term success, realizing that, okay, they are playing some teams right now. I know Boston is a strong team, but when you start the year with series against the White Sox and the Twins, you are expected to get a boatload of wins. But hey, last year they struggled versus those squads, and hey, it's really important that, just like the old adage is, you can only play the teams that are on your schedule. Might as well go out there and win them. And when you win 5 of 7, the manager does also have to get a little bit of credit. And again, I would say this. You do get a sense that this team, having stuck together, is playing with a sense of urgency. And maybe there will be some magic with the whole passing of Mr. I, playing together, a factor not regarding the talent on the team, but a factor that's psychological in terms of embracing the passing of Mr. I, unifying as a group, and playing together, because that does wonders, Vito. And you can look to that and say, you know what? Maybe the numbers might not speak to success for this Tigers team, but maybe psychologically this team can rally together and play a solid brand of baseball. But hey, I'll take it. 7 games, 5 wins. It's looking good. In terms of the starting pitching, which I know you and I are looking at intently, everyone's looked pretty good. Verlander's played decent. Fulmer got robbed of a victory in opening day, but he looks to have a really good season and is looking to really, shed the label of and he's looking to shed the notion that, all second-year players are going to struggle. I think he's on the verge of potentially having a strong year. You look at Norris and Boyd, they can do some things, but the starters overall, for me, have been quite impressive, and that unit has really kept this team in a position to win some of these games and going 6 to 8 innings and really doing some things. Look at Boyd's number versus the Twins in the opening game. He kept him in the game.
5 2/3 of no-hit ball. I mean, come on, you can't do better than that. And he really rebounded after his poor outing once again against the White Sox. White Sox and Twins and the Royals this year, Doc, are teams the Tigers have to beat consistently. If they terrorize the bottom half of the AL Central, they could sneak in as a wild card team. Still, it's believed highly that the Indians are the class of the AL Central. I have not gotten rid of that feeling myself. I still have the notion that the Indians will get it done enough to win the AL Central, but the Tigers, if they beat up on the White Sox, the Twins, the Royals consistently throughout the rest of the season, the Tigers could very well get into the playoffs. And you asked me about the starting pitching that has impressed me up to this point. Obviously JV, but that's not a surprise whatsoever. More of Zimmerman, J-Zim looking good enough, and Daniel Norris looking really good at times, and looking one at-bat that comes to the top of my head is him against Dustin Pedroia. Did you see that at-bat where he K'd Pedroia, made him look silly? He was falling down on his swing, Pedroia, as he struck out against the lefty Daniel Norris, who I could see being a dominant lefty. If he stays healthy, he will be very productive and dominant, I think, more often than not. And I think he has more of that no-hit stuff than even Michael Fulmer. So I think you could see Norris emerge as the second best starting pitcher in the Tigers' rotation as the season does progress. And then Zimmerman, please, just stay healthy. And if he is good enough to fill the role of a number 3, number 4, I think the Tigers rotation 1 through 5, along with Daniel Norris being healthy once again, that 1 through 5 will be magnificent throughout the majority of the season and more than good enough to get the Tigers into the playoffs. That's my opinion. But the bullpen is going to be downtrodden and maybe enough, to hamper the Tigers' chances to get into the playoffs. That's the one thing I still see causing the Tigers to miss out on the postseason this year.
Okay, Vito, valid concerns. Where do you want to take this to finish this very fine podcast?
We have 2 things of note to bring up right now. The season debut of your Buster of the Week, Doc, and my toast of the town. Now, who do you have then for your first of this season Buster of the Week?
Obviously, the name that of course, it stings me to say, but Bruce Rondon, Buster of the Week. You cannot come into the season overweight, pushing 3 bills. Come on now. The team is giving you a role, setup guy, a very important role, and you don't take it seriously. You get sent down within the first week of the season. You also put the organization in a tough spot because Jimenez was under club control. So meaning that once the Tigers were forced to bring him up, now he's on the clock. The Tigers are now in a situation where if Jimenez plays the rest of this year, he'll now have 1 year of service in Major League Baseball, where you could have had him under club control for an additional year and had him really hone his skills in the minors. So Bruce Rondon could have potentially hurt Jimenez if he does struggle when he comes up, because everyone is excited about Jimenez coming up and what he could do potentially. But at the same time, because of Rondon's unprofessionalism, he's now forced the organization to bring up a guy earlier than they may have wanted to. So week 1, the Buster of the Week is Bruce Rondon.
Now, you're totally disregarding Miguel Cabrera then. Come on, how about the big slugger, Triple Crown winner of the past, only hitting $125, Doc? Come on, and not your Buster of the Week? And a lot more at-bats, plate appearances than relief appearances for Bruce Rondon before he was sent down to Triple-A? Come on.
Everyone's saying, just relax. It's a situation where, hey, if he's going to have a slump, might as well be in the beginning of the year than at any other point. Just relax, as everyone's saying.
Who should my toast of the town be? Now, my preference right now is to go with Nick Castellanos. Not the greatest numbers yet, but all the hard contact. And I just think he's on the verge of a breakout season. And he's showing it more and more, I think, and will continue to do so. And had the game-winning hit Monday against Chris Sale, the former White Sox ace. And Chris Sale, this tall left-hander who was always snake-bitten. Remember against the Tigers when he would face the Tigers as a member of the White Sox? It seemed like he never got run support. And guess what? With the great Bo Sox lineup, once again, this past Monday, no run support given to Chris Sale. And I love to see it, Verlander getting it done in that duel. And Tigers, as a result, took 3 out of 4 against the Bo Sox. So you could give it to Verlander, the toast of the town. And I think I will actually, but Nick Castellanos, for me, I just like him so much, I guess, he's a close second right now. And Justin Wilson, he could be number 3 in the pecking order for who my toast of the town is after what has been now a full week of the regular season for the Tigers, Doc.
All right, Vito, I always enjoy listening to you on the Tuesdays that we record this podcast. I can sense your love of baseball. What are you looking to end this podcast? Let's preview the Cleveland Indians series quickly. Do you think the Tigers have a chance to at least win the series? I think going into it, and I've talked about it with Jason and the other fellas, I think you just need to get at least a victory out of this series. You cannot go out there and get swept. I think it's an important series early in the year in that you want to gain some confidence and you don't want to have a repeat of what happened last year. I think you go into Cleveland, you set the tone against them, and you have an opportunity to send a message that, hey, last year was a fluke. You're not going to go out here and win 14, 15 games on us this year. We're going to go out here and compete. And I really do feel like the way they're playing, if they can continue to get success versus the Twins, I think they're going to have a strong opportunity to go out there and maybe win 2 of 3 on the road versus Cleveland.
Hey, by the way, the Twins might still win 2 out of 3 in this series because their bats might get to the Tigers' pen just enough times. And the Indians, I could see it happening with them as well, playing the Tigers, as their bats are really good and their bullpen's better. Head-to-head with the Tigers are way better. Now, it's starring Andrew Miller, which really helps out the Indians' pen in that head-to-head matchup. And it's more about the bats of the Indians succeeding against the Tigers' pen mightily, and that's why I see the Indians taking 2 out of 3. And once again, in this series, as we talk about it right now against the Twins, I could see the Twins taking 2 out of 3 because they have some strong, potent bats as well. So Tigers might be due for a little losing here, Doc, to say the least. Not to scare all the Tigers fans who are listening to this fine podcast, but the Tigers' success might stop here, at least for a little bit, Doc.
Great podcast. As always, I look forward to next week.
All right, Doc, everybody listening, thank you much, and tune in for next week's episode as well. God bless. Goodbye.